Okay, welcome back. Week 14. Sounds so strange to even call it week 14. Still miss you guys. I can still see who's coming in late from here at 8 o'clock in the morning. I see you over there, Nicolina. Just kidding. Modi, are you paying attention back there? Okay. I got your attention. So where was I? Yeah, I miss you guys. This is strange doing this alone, but we're going to do a review. We're going to attempt to do a review for our final exam. Our final exam will consist of the illustrations only. You will have these illustrations in your Blackboard PDF file that you can download, print, illustrate, scan and email back, or take a picture and email it back. If you're taking pictures, try to be clear of what you're taking a picture of. And no cats like Ashley and Carrie coming into the visuals. I've quarantined them now for the review. But I'm going to start off with the class 1. We'll leave this alone. That we've talked about this before. Here we had Mrs. Beckham, 35-year-old case scenario. We'll leave the case scenarios out and we'll concentrate on the 4 steps. And the step 1, outline the edentulous area and how I'm going to adhere 5, 6, and 7 on both sides to this cast partial denture. Outline these here. Acrylic denture base, external finishing line. Step 2, mesocclusal rest to move the fulcrum line the most anterior as possible in the class 1. I have 3 choices, RPI, Y, and G. Obviously, the bar clasps of Y and G will be dependent on the labial frenum and the depth of the, buccal frenum and the depth of the buccal vestibule on each side. So with that in mind, I don't have the model, but I'll just do the G clasp once again, as we did before, to kind of reinforce that. Mesial buccal undercut. Now, rests, auxiliary rests, or indirect retention. And we know that what we've been discussing, that this fulcrum line exists through the class 1 and 2, through the 2 most distal rests of the abutments, and an indirect retention up at the centrals would be most prudent. But the centrals, which we talked about, clinical crown height is very low. So I'm going to move off to the canines and as a minimum cingulum rest. Now there's different designs for the class 1, but I'm going to give you the minimum. Step 4, major connector. Off the minor connectors supporting the cingulum rests on 3-3 and 4-3. Now, whether we know the patient compliance will be high or low, whether they've worn a partial denture before or not, whether the opposing is a full denture or full dentition, a lot of unknown here for patient compliance. But what is known is, on our end, that the technical compliance must be perfect. The lingual bar 3 to 5 millimeters off the gingival margin. If we don't have that space from TOI, our lingual frenums, or the myohyoid group of muscles are high here, then we can move to an apron. If we choose to have an apron or Kennedy bar for more indirect retention, here's a Kennedy bar, connecting this all the way around, we're going to have this too as well. Increasing indirect retention. Whether we want to plate all of these teeth in the anterior section, we can do that as well to increase indirect retention. So we started off with the minimum, and then we added window dressing design on top from the scenarios, which are here at the top. Whether you want to add a shoe extension, and what kind of shoe extension, a long 1 millimeter one or the classic 2 millimeter one here. Either or is correct. So this here reinforces our class 1 design and the principles of class 1 design through a basic bilateral free end here. through the 4-step sequencing of our drawings. When we have no treatment plan, that I want you to get used to using those 4 steps. Outline the edentulous area. Step 2, the direct retainers. Step 3, auxiliary rests and indirect retention considerations. And step 4, major connector. Those 4 steps will work on all partial dentures. We've got the class 2 maxillary, and we'll do step 1, outline the edentulous area. Maxillary has to go all the way back to the tuberosity. The denture base will cover all the way back here. Direct retainer. Well, look no further than the 1-3. Look no further. The same rules apply as class 1, whether it's a roach clasp, I-bar, or G-clasp. Aesthetic zone, we'll use the roach clasp. Reciprocation, cingulum rest. So step 1, edentulous area. Step 2, direct retainers. This is all I've designed, but I'm missing this whole side over here. I have no modification. I can choose to do the embrasure clasp or 4 and 7. We'll do the embrasure clasp first. So this is direct retainer still. I'm still on step 2. Step 3. Auxiliary rests and indirect retention. So in this case, our fulcrum line, and we'll just do symmetry. You don't have to do these on your drawings. It just kind of visualizes better. That the indirect retainer would be 90 degrees to this fulcrum line. So the lateral, no, we'll move it to the canine. This will be my indirect retention. I want to match this. If I'm going to cingulum rest, I'll cingulum rest here. If I'm going to plate this, then I'll plate this one. And then step 4, connect. Symmetrically connect. Now, is this a horseshoe? That's fine. Anterior, posterior palatal strap, that's fine as well. Either is acceptable. And here we have the class 2 with no modification, going through the same 4 steps. Outline the edentulous area, direct retainers, indirect retainer and auxiliary rests, and major connector consideration. We don't know the depth of the mouth. We don't know the drape of the soft palate. We don't even know where the undercuts are, but I'm just going through the procedures of classic design. A more prudent design than this one, which you won't see in the marketplace, this would be more classic, would be clasping of the 6 and the 4, where there's no modification existing on the other side. We're going to clasp 4 and 7, 4 and 7. Better still, I'll just do it, and superimpose it on top here, not to confuse you. But I would do 4 and 7. So we've got one anterior is possible, one posterior is possible in the posterior section of the dentate side, and then join these to the major connector, therefore eliminating the need for a indirect retainer on the 3, because by moving the posterior rest onto 7, I've did a little bit darker, that midpoint, that the indirect retainer here on 4 is more effective counteracting the rotation around the fulcrum line. As the posterior section wants to lift, the rest on 1-4 in the second design, or the rest on 2-3 will prevent the lift of the free end. The load on the free end now cannot be counteracted with just a rest on the 3. This will lift, but will create the mesial buccal undercut of the Akers arm on 2-4, engage the mesial buccal undercut, preventing the load in the posterior section. So, both are correct. The second one is more effective, but both are correct. Whether it's a full palate, whether it's a horseshoe, but these are the dynamics of the design that need to be considered. If you have clasping out here in the centrals and rests way out here, that's unnecessary. Maybe if you want to plate everything up here in the front and make it a closed oval, that's fine too. But that's kind of going against the hygienic principles of prosthetic design, which we try to stay away from the free gingival margins. Let's get on to Kennedy Class 3. Same for principles of design. Lower, outline the edentulous area. Acrylic will be the denture base. External finishing line finishing at the 3-3 straight down. Direct retainers. We know adjacent to the edentulous area, we need to have rests. Now in a Class 3, there's no rotation, so we can have any kind of rests that we wish. Any type of clasps that we wish, excuse me. We're going to have Roach clasp, eye bars, acres, Rottweiler clasps, all kinds. Really the easiest to design. Clasp the teeth adjacent to the edentulous area. Clasp the teeth adjacent to the edentulous area on the opposite side of the arch, and then connect with a major connector. We have no modification, so the same thing as the last one. I think classic would be 5 and 6. 6 being the trifurcated root abutment, a lot stronger to handle the retention forces. Auxiliary rests are done. No indirect retention, and connect the major connector. Now, if you want to plate this canine, that's fine. This is a bare minimum design. Now, if I'm a betting man, I think the 3-7 is the next tooth to be lost from this patient here. Depending on where the undercut was too. Normally when we have a 3-7, which is going to migrate slightly, the undercut's probably mesiobuccal, mesiolingual, will engage with a ring clasp and a dual auxiliary rest. But basic acres, depending where the undercut is, we don't have a model. But if this is going to go, then all of a sudden we're into a Class 2, and then lo and behold, if that tooth is extracted, we have a fulcrum line, and then bisected immediately, 90 degrees. An indirect retainer would probably go there. So if we want to plan for something coming up, like I said, plan for what's going to happen, then maybe an apron as an auxiliary rest on 3-3 and 4-3 to match. Is it an indirect retainer? Not now. Will it be an indirect retainer? Possibly in the future. We want more stability if this is going to happen. We could clasp 4 and 7 as we just did on the prior drawing. On the dentate side, if we have anterior as possible, posterior as possible, we have a more stable design. And that stable design, why is it stable? Well, the first drawing has a triangle tripod 3 rest points. Statics of design of the second one would give us this rhomboidal 4-sided support. And it's all about the area of this support system. So I've kind of gone over the drawing here, but the first one was a triangle, and the second one was this kind of a rhombus trapezoid. And if we do square footage area of support between the 4 and the 3, which one is more stable? Obviously the 4. The 4-legged chair is more stable than the camera tripod. Now, can the dentist prep there? Can the patient accept the lingual bar going further back? Is there room to have the lingual bar going back from any lingual version of the natural teeth? Questions unknown without the model. But things that I need you to think about as the starter dental technician in designing prosthetics. These fundamentals don't change when we go to implant abutment design, which we'll do in semester 6. When we'll start with our removal prosthetics, we'll go to the fixed prosthetics. These fundamentals in biomechanics of prosthodontics is no different in implant retained dentures. Whether we're going to do 2 locator abutments or 4, or ball attachments or bars and clips and cantilevering and AP span. It's all derived from the same biomechanics and cast partial denture design. Let's move on to the last one for review. So like I said earlier, if you fell asleep to my melodic voice. Balky, that's you. Did you fall asleep? No, I didn't think so. Because you're watching this in the afternoon, not it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Good for you guys. We are going to have a final exam, 10 drawings. Most likely 5 with instructions, 5 without. I think you could anticipate which 5 in either category. So here we have Kennedy Class 4. Outline the edentulous area. Whether they're going to be high metal backings, whether they're going to be mesh and posts. And you can see I've left room for the incisive papilla to be covered in acrylic. That's why it has that kind of design. And then we'll put some posts on here from a diagnostic setup. And classic embrasure clasp. There is no posterior edentulous area. So we have no modification in the posterior. We're not going to clasp the canines. I mean, in a lot of textbooks, they show, eye bars coming off the anterior section to counteract any type of rotation that might happen. But we're going to live with it here depending on the aesthetics. The aesthetics of that is not really acceptable by most clients. I don't think so. Step 1, edentulous area. Step 2, direct retainers. Step 3, anterior or let's say auxiliary rests. And step 4, major connector. The auxiliary rests are necessary in an anterior modification. They could be a cingulum rest, they can be a plate, or a mesiolingual rest. To keep it different, I'll leave the mesiolingual rest. And it looks somewhat like our project, except here we had the metal backings and no flange. But still, this design here, and obviously on the left-hand side, write down your instructions. Tooth numbering has to be accurate. The terminology has to be accurate. I mean, we're approaching the end of second year now. I think the command of our dental terminology should be paramount and become second language by now. And we can't tell things, the thing on the left should touch tooth number, and then you got the wrong number. I mean, really try to be succinct in your drawing and in your instructions. Don't rush. You've got 10. Long span class 5 or class 4 long span. Let me see if I have one here. I think we had one at the back of the workbook. So we've got something here. This is a lower. There's only 2 7s remaining. Obviously, implants, acrylic partial, wire clasp would be a good idea. But denture base here is going to be all mesh retention. Right? This is the class 3 actually. But the class 3 rules don't apply. So we call this the class 4 long span. Class 4 is just the anterior 3 to 3. And now we're making this huge class 4, which we know when this happens, from what we've talked about, there will be a fulcrum line existing between these 2 terminal abutments on 7 with a rotation line around this fulcrum line, for sure. So the rest, step 1, this is all going to be acrylic denture base. If I can illustrate acrylic denture base here, all the way around. Kind of sloppy, but you get the picture. This will all be an acrylic denture base wrapping around this whole mesh retention. This rotation line will exist. We need to engage mesiobuccal or mesiolingual. Depending on the survey of the case, depending where the undercut exists, I'll rest here. This is step 2, direct retainers. We got to go all the way around. Most likely we'll go around with a ring clasp here. And a ring clasp engaging, ring clasp, auxiliary rest, ring clasp. Step 1, edentulous area. Step 2, direct retainer. Step 3, auxiliary rests on the ring clasp. There is no indirect retention except step 4, the major connector. It's already been done. Why is it prudent to have the rest, the engaging on the mesial? I'll draw 2 7s We've got a 7 here, we've got a 7 here, we've got the mesial, and we've got the distal, consistent on both drawings. I'll move up. You guys gotta tell me when I'm off the screen. And we have our height of contour on our 7s. Classically, which I see in the marketplace, which is completely incorrect, is an undercut engaging the distal undercut with an Akers clasp on a case such as this above. What happens now with this fulcrum line, the partial denture wants to move vertically in the anterior. If it moves up this way, then this clasp will want to move down further into this gingival margin, further deeper into the undercut, which is not really doing any retention at all. It's rotating away from the undercut into the free gingival margin. If we reverse the clasp, whether it's mesiolingual or mesiobuccal, doesn't matter. If we reverse the clasp, maybe I engaged too much there, but you get the idea. If I reverse the clasp, engaging the mesial, the anterior section will want to lift as usual, and then this clasp will rotate into the undercut, as this will want to rotate down. So this is now an appropriate, effective, direct retainer. So I went through kind of quickly. We had class 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 are tooth and tissue borne with fulcrum lines. Class 3 and 4 are tooth borne, no fulcrum lines. Sometimes class 4, there's one that does happen. And then we can move further back to the posterior dentate side in that class 4 to counteract those rotations. If we went with the classic design in class 4, that's fine too. All are acceptable. What's not acceptable is to have parts missing, clasps unidentified, and drawings incomplete. I'm going to wish you guys the best. It looks like we might not see each other for a while, but I will see you through your drawings. Once again, I miss your smiling faces. I miss our time together on Wednesday. Cherish those moments that we've had. Selfishly, I've had some great laughs. I hope you have too, as well as we learned something or two along the way. We got frustrated along the way as well. Equipment, air quality, miscasts, availability, timing, time management. A lot of frustrating things happen, but we overcame those, I think, or are overcoming them, or have chosen to overcome them, and spend our time wisely and learn something along the way and embark on this great journey as dental technicians. So if I don't see you, I look forward to seeing your drawings, and I especially look forward to seeing you all personally in the next coming semester. Thanks.